A golden retriever sits motionless at an abandoned gas station. Snow swirls violently around him, coating his fur with ice crystals, but his eyes remain fixed on the deserted highway stretching into the distance. Despite the howling wind and bone-chilling temperatures, he doesn't seek shelter. He simply waits, as he has done every day for 4 long years, for someone who never comes. 4 years earlier, Thanksgiving Day was drawing to a close in the Carpenter household. The dining room of their modest Wyoming home was filled with the lingering sense of turkey, stuffing, and pumpkin pie. Laughter echoed through the rooms as relatives gathered their coats and hugged goodbye. Mike Carpenter, a sturdy man with kind eyes and calloused hands from years of carpentry work, helped his mother-in-law into her coat while his wife Lily packed leftover turkey into containers for departing guests. "Noah, come say goodbye to Grandma," Lily called up the stairs. Their 10-year-old son thundered down, a golden blur of fur racing ahead of him. "Max, slow down," Noah laughed as the young golden retriever skidded across the hardwood floor, tail wagging with enough force to clear the coffee table of magazines. Noah's grandmother bent down with a groan of arthritic knees to ruffle Max's golden fur. "You take care of this family, you hear me?" she said to the dog, who responded by licking her hand enthusiastically. Max was no ordinary family pet. Just 2 years old, he'd been Noah's companion since he was a puppy, sleeping at the foot of the boy's bed every night, following him everywhere during the day. The bond between them was something special, the kind of connection that happens when a child and a dog grow up together, their hearts somehow intertwined. After the last guest had departed, the Carpenters began packing up their own SUV. They lived across the state line in Montana, about 3 hours from the grandparents' home where they'd gathered for the holiday. "We should get going," Mike said, glancing at his watch. "Weather report says there's snow coming in near home." Lily nodded, zipping up Noah's coat. "I'd rather be through the mountain pass before it hits." They loaded the car with overnight bags, containers of leftovers, and Noah's backpack full of books and games that had kept him entertained during family politics at dinner. Max circled excitedly, knowing that car preparations meant he was going somewhere too. "Come on, boy." Noah patted the back seat, and Max leaped in, settling beside him. The dog pressed his nose against the window as they pulled away, watching Noah's grandparents wave from the front porch. For the first hour of the drive, the roads were clear and dry. They passed through small towns decorated for the holidays, storefront windows already glittering with Christmas lights and displays. Noah fell asleep against Max's warm side, his hand resting in the dog's fur. Max remained alert, alternating between watching the road ahead and gently licking Noah's fingers. "He's out cold," Mike commented, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Turkey coma," Lily smiled. "Your mom's cooking will do that." As they crossed the Montana border, the landscape began to change. The distant mountains loomed larger, and the first scattered snowflakes danced in their headlights. The radio warned of a storm system moving faster than expected. "Should we stop?" Lily asked, her voice tightening as the snowfall intensified. Mike shook his head. "We're closer to home than any town with a motel. Better to keep going. We'll just take it slow." The SUV's headlights carved a narrow path through the thickening snow. Outside, the world had transformed into a swirling white void, disorienting and beautiful. Inside, the family remained cocooned in warmth. Max had lifted his head, sensing the tension in Mike's shoulders as he leaned forward, straining to see the road. "There's the sign for Miller Creek," Lily said with relief. "Only 20 miles from home." "Almost there, buddy," Mike said, more to himself than anyone else. His knuckles had gone white on the steering wheel. What happened next occurred in fractions of seconds that would be replayed in their memories for years to come. A deer, invisible until the last possible moment, leaped onto the highway directly in their path. Mike swerved instinctively, the SUV's tires losing their fragile grip on the ice-slicked asphalt. There was the sickening sensation of sliding sideways, of all control vanishing. Lily's scream woke Noah, who sat up in confusion just as Max let out a startled bark. The world spun. Once. Twice. Glass shattered as they left the road, the SUV rolling down the embankment before coming to rest on its side against a cluster of pines. Then, silence. The kind of heavy silence that follows catastrophe, broken only by the soft hiss of steam rising from the crumpled hood and the distant sound of snow falling on metal. "Noah?" Lily's voice came first, thin with fear. "Noah, baby, answer me." "Mom?" Noah's voice was small and confused. "I can't move my arm." "Don't try, son." Mike's voice now, strained but steady. "Just stay still. Are you hurt anywhere else?" "I don't think so." "Where's Max?" "Max?" But Max, terrified by the crash and the sudden smell of blood and gasoline, had somehow escaped through the broken rear window. Disoriented and whimpering with fear, the golden retriever stumbled through the snow, a limp in his gait suggesting injury. In the chaos that followed, the distant wail of sirens, The shouts of the first passerby who spotted the wreck, the emergency responders who worked to free the family. No one noticed the dog making his way painfully up the embankment to the road. Max stood at the roadside, trembling, watching as strangers pulled his family from the broken vehicle. He barked once, twice, but his sounds were lost in the wind and the human commotion. When the ambulances arrived, their harsh lights and blaring sirens further frightened the injured dog. In pain and confusion, Max did what animals often do when overwhelmed. He retreated. Limping along the highway's edge, he followed the lingering scent of his family's passage. But with each painful step, he moved farther from the accident scene and the humans who might have helped him. At the hospital 20 miles away, the Carpenters were being treated for their injuries. Mike had suffered a broken collarbone and severe concussion. Lily had lacerations across her face from flying glass and 3 broken ribs. Noah, protected by his booster seat, had escaped with a broken arm and a gash on his forehead that would require stitches. It wasn't until the initial shock began to wear off that Noah asked again, his voice ragged with exhaustion and pain. "Where's Max? Is he okay?" Lily looked at Mike, sudden horror dawning on both their faces. "The dog," Mike said to the nurse, checking his vitals. "Our dog was in the car. Did they bring him in too?" The nurse frowned. "I'm sorry, there wasn't any mention of a dog." In the confusion of the accident and rescue, with human lives at stake, Max had become an oversight, a detail lost in the emergency response. "We have to find him," Noah whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, we have to go back for Max." But none of them would be going anywhere that night. Noah's condition suddenly deteriorated, his pediatric doctor concerned about signs of internal bleeding. Within an hour, he was being prepared for emergency surgery. For 3 terrifying days, Noah remained in a medically induced coma, while his parents kept vigil at his bedside, their own injuries secondary to their concern for their son. When Noah finally opened his eyes, his first broken whisper was, "Did they find Max?" Mike had to shake his head. The state police and local animal control had been notified, but the blizzard that had followed the accident made search efforts nearly impossible. Posters went up in surrounding towns as soon as the roads were clear enough. The Carpenters called every shelter within a 100-mile radius. They drove the accident route repeatedly once Noah was home, calling Max's name until their voices gave out. But Max was gone. What they couldn't know was that Max had been trying to find his way home too. Injured and vulnerable, the golden retriever had followed the highway, his instincts guiding him back to where he had last felt safe, the spot where the family's journey had been so violently interrupted. 2 days after the accident, as a fresh blanket of snow erased all traces of the tragedy, a limping golden retriever arrived at the boarded-up Miller's gas station, just yards from where the SUV had slid off the road. Once a busy rural service station, it had been closed for years, its pumps rusted, its windows covered with plywood. Exhausted and hurting, Max circled the abandoned building, sniffing desperately for any trace of his family. Finding none, he settled on a patch of concrete near the old pumps, his eyes fixed on the highway stretching in both directions. And there, Max made a decision that would define the next 4 years of his life. This was the last place his family had been whole. This was where he would wait for them to return. As days turned to weeks, Max established a routine. Each morning, he would circle the perimeter of the gas station, checking for any sign of the Carpenters. Then he would take up his position by the pumps, his amber eyes scanning every vehicle that passed. When hunger drove him, he would hunt in the nearby fields for mice or rabbits, never venturing far, always returning to his post. At night, he would curl up beneath the station's sagging overhang, offering minimal protection from the elements. Winter deepened around him. His injured leg healed imperfectly, leaving him with a permanent limp. His once lustrous coat grew matted in places, dulled by exposure and poor nutrition. Still, something in him remained unalterably faithful. He had one purpose now, to be there when his family returned for him. Meanwhile, the Carpenters were healing too, physically at least. Noah's arm mended cleanly in its cast. Lily's facial lacerations faded to faint lines that would eventually become nearly invisible. Mike returned to work after 6 weeks, the pain in his shoulder a constant reminder of that Thanksgiving night. But emotionally, a piece of their family remained missing. Noah's nightmares woke him screaming for Max. The empty dog bed in the corner of his room became a monument to absence. Lily caught herself calling Max's name when she dropped food while cooking. Mike would pause before opening the front door, unconsciously expecting the scrabble of excited paws from the other side. He might have been found by another family, Lily suggested one night, trying to ease Noah's persistent grief. Someone kind who's taking good care of him. Noah shook his head with the certainty of a child who knows his own heart. "He's waiting for us, Mom. Max wouldn't go with anyone else. He's waiting somewhere." If only they had known how right he was. Spring came to Montana, melting the snowdrifts around Miller's gas station. Max's vigil continued, though the changing season brought new challenges. The warming weather meant more travelers on the highway, each vehicle reigniting his hope only to extinguish it moments later when familiar faces didn't appear. There were days when Max's resolve wavered. A female dog wandered by once, trying to entice him to follow her. He rose, took a few steps after her, then stopped and returned to his post. Food might draw him momentarily away, the hunt a necessary distraction, but he always returned to the station. Something deeper than instinct held him there, a devotion that transcended his own comfort and need for companionship. By summer, Max's presence had been noticed by regular commuters along the highway. Most drove past without a second thought, just a stray dog haunting an old gas station. But a few began to slow down, puzzled by his constant presence. One such observer was Mrs. Eleanor Parker, owner of the Silver Spoon Diner in the town of Miller Creek, 5 miles down the highway. At 68, Eleanor had lived in the area her entire life and had seen the old gas station go from a thriving business to an abandoned shell. Her daily drive to and from the diner took her past Miller's Gas twice a day, and for several weeks, she noticed the golden retriever sitting in the same spot. At first, she assumed he belonged to someone living nearby, but as days passed with no change, concern etched itself into her already lined face. One evening in late June, Eleanor pulled her ancient Buick off the highway and parked on the cracked concrete of the station lot. The golden retriever watched her approach, alert but not aggressive. He seemed to study her face intently before determining she wasn't who he was waiting for and returning his gaze to the highway. "Hey there, buddy," Eleanor said softly, crouching with some difficulty. Her knees weren't what they used to be. "You been out here a while, huh?" Max glanced at her again but made no move to approach. Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out a paper-wrapped ham sandwich, her own dinner she'd brought from the diner. "You hungry?" She unwrapped it and placed half on the ground, then backed away. Max's nose twitched at the scent of food, but he remained in position for nearly 10 minutes before hunger finally drew him to the offering. He ate quickly, neatly, then returned to his watching place. "You're waiting for someone," Eleanor murmured, a heaviness in her voice. She'd seen that look before, in her own mirror after her Harold passed. That patient certainty that if you just waited long enough, the one you loved would come back. The next day, Eleanor returned with proper dog food in a bowl. The day after, she brought a blanket. Max accepted these kindnesses with dignified gratitude but never abandoned his vigil for long. Eleanor began telling diner regulars about the loyal dog at Miller's Gas. "Rain or shine, that dog's sitting there watching the road like he's expecting someone," she'd say, refilling coffee cups. "Been there as far back as early spring, far as I can tell." Word spread through Miller Creek. A local veterinarian, Dr. Midas Wilson, accompanied Eleanor one evening to check on the dog's health. Max tolerated the brief examination with stoic patience. "He's undernourished, but not critically," the vet reported. "The limp is from an old injury that healed without treatment. I'd say he's about 3 years old, maybe 4. Purebred golden retriever, probably was someone's pet. Can we catch him? Find him a home?" Eleanor asked. Dr. Wilson shook his head. "He's not aggressive, but he's clearly determined to stay here. Forcing him away could cause more trauma. Best we can do is make sure he's fed and keep an eye on him." And so began a community effort to care for the dog who waited. Eleanor organized a rotation of volunteers who would drop off food and fresh water daily. During a thunderstorm in August, someone brought a large plastic doghouse and set it up beneath the station overhang. Max sniffed it thoroughly but continued to sleep in the open, as if afraid he might miss his family's return if he were inside the shelter. As summer waned and the first chill of autumn returned to the air, Max's routine remained unchanged. His body had adapted to outdoor living, his coat growing thicker in anticipation of the coming cold. The food left by Eleanor and others had improved his condition somewhat, but he remained lean and alert, his eyes never losing their watchful quality. There were attempts to adopt him. A kind family with 2 young children stopped one day, having heard about the waiting dog at the old gas station. The father approached slowly with a leash, speaking in soothing tones. The children called encouragingly. Max allowed them to pet him briefly, even wagged his tail at their gentle touches. But when they tried to lead him to their car, he planted his feet and refused to budge. After several fruitless attempts, they left, the children waving sadly from the back window. Another time, animal control was called by a concerned traveler who thought Max was abandoned. The officer managed to get a loop around Max's neck, but the dog became so distressed, not aggressive, but making sounds of such profound anguish, that the officer ultimately released him. "That dog's not leaving this spot unless it's his choice," the officer later told Eleanor at the diner. Never seen anything like it. As Max's second winter at Miller's Gas approached, the dog's legend had grown among locals. Some began to see him as more than just a loyal pet. He became a symbol of faithfulness, of love that endures beyond all reasonable expectation. Parents would slow down to point him out to their children, See that dog? He's been waiting there for his family for more than a year now. That's what real love looks like. Children would ask their parents to drive by the old station so they could see the forever dog, as they'd taken to calling him. Some would press their small hands against car windows as they passed, their voices hushed with a reverence usually reserved for sacred spaces. Eleanor noticed that people had started leaving more than just food. Small tokens appeared near Max's usual sitting spot: a toy bone, a handwritten note weighted down with a stone, a small cross, even flowers. It was as if the community had made Max's vigil into a kind of shrine to loyalty itself. One December day, a snowplow driver named Frank Martinez made an unscheduled stop at the station during a heavy snowfall. It wasn't on his route, but he'd heard about the waiting dog and worried Max might be buried in the mounting drifts. What he found nearly broke his heart. Max was almost invisible beneath a blanket of snow, only his head exposed as he maintained his watch over the highway. Frank cleared a path around him in a wide area where Max could move without struggling through deep snow. "You stubborn soul," Frank said with gruff tenderness as he worked. "Don't know if you're the most faithful dog alive or the most fool-headed." By the time Max had been at Miller's Gas for 2 full years, he had become part of the landscape, as much a landmark as the mountains on the horizon or the abandoned station itself. Travelers would ask about him at the Silver Spoon Diner, and Eleanor would tell what little they knew of his story. Was he left behind by accident? Was his owner coming back but got delayed? How can he still believe after all this time? Eleanor had no answers, only more questions. But sometimes, when she brought Max his evening meal and sat with him for a while, she thought she understood. "You know something we don't you?" she'd murmur, watching him scan the highway with unwavering attention. "You feel them out there somewhere." The seasons cycled again. Spring rain, summer heat, autumn winds, winter snow. Through it all, Max maintained his lonely vigil. His muzzle began to show traces of gray, the only visible sign that time was passing for him too. During his 3rd winter at the station, a particularly vicious blizzard hit the region. Roads were closed for days. Eleanor fretted constantly about Max, unable to reach him with the highway shut down. When the plows finally cleared a path, she persuaded her grandson to drive her out to the station immediately, certain they would find the worst. Instead, they found Max exactly where he always was, a bit leaner but very much alive. He had apparently dug a hollow in a snowdrift against the station wall, creating a primitive shelter that trapped his body heat. The remains of a rabbit nearby suggested he'd managed to hunt despite the storm. "You smart, stubborn creature," Eleanor said through tears of relief, kneeling in the snow to embrace him. For the first time, Max leaned into her touch briefly, as if acknowledging her concern, before resuming his watch. It was after this storm that the local newspaper ran a small feature about Max. The faithful sentinel of Highway 23 carried a photo of the golden retriever at his post, ears alert, eyes fixed on the distance. The article recounted what the community knew of his 3-year vigil and the efforts to care for him. But even this small bit of publicity didn't reach the Carpenters, living in their grief 2 counties away. By now, Noah was 13, no longer the little boy who had cuddled with a puppy, but a teenager with memories that had begun to soften at the edges. He still spoke of Max sometimes, still claimed his dog was out there somewhere, but there was less certainty in his voice. The sharp edge of loss had dulled to a persistent ache, present but bearable. Life had moved forward for the Carpenters. Mike had been promoted at work. Lily had gone back to school to finish her nursing degree. They had discussed getting another dog. Perhaps it would help Noah finally accept that Max was gone, but something always held them back. It felt too much like replacing a family member. And all the while, just 60 miles away, Max continued his patient wait, his faith undiminished by the passage of time. By the 4th year of Max's vigil, the golden retriever had become more than just a local curiosity. He was a legend, a living monument to faithfulness that drew people from neighboring towns. The community around Miller Creek had not only embraced him but had woven his story into their collective identity. At the Silver Spoon Diner, Eleanor had put up a bulletin board dedicated to Our Max. It featured photographs of the dog in all seasons, notes from children who visited him, and a calendar where volunteers signed up to take food and check on him. A large glass jar by the register collected donations for his care, money that went toward quality dog food, flea treatments, and the occasional veterinary visit. Dr. Wilson, the vet who had first examined Max years ago, now made regular house calls to the gas station. "He's aging, but he's remarkably healthy considering," he reported after one such visit. "His spirit is keeping him going." Local teachers brought classes on field trips to see Max, using his story to teach lessons about loyalty, hope, and perseverance. Children would sit at a respectful distance, watching him with wide eyes as their teachers explained how the dog had waited for his family through 4 years of seasons. "Does he ever get sad?" one first grader asked during such a trip. The teacher considered this. "I think he must feel sad sometimes," she answered truthfully, "but he has a purpose that's stronger than his sadness." The children nodded solemnly, understanding something profound in a way that only children can. Even the county tourism office had gotten involved, including Max in a brochure about local attractions. "Visit the waiting dog of Miller's Gas," it suggested, alongside recommendations for hiking trails and fishing spots. Not everyone approved of this attention. Some thought it exploitative, turning an animal's possible trauma into a sideshow. Others believed Max should be forcibly rescued and placed in a home, arguing that his vigil was unnecessary suffering. But most locals had come to respect Max's choice. They spoke of him in hushed, reverential tones, the way people discuss matters of faith or deep conviction. One snowy evening, Eleanor arrived with Max's dinner to find a stranger already there, a woman in her 40s, bundled against the cold, sitting on a camping stool several feet from Max. "I hope you don't mind," the woman said, seeing Eleanor's questioning look. "I read about him online. I drove 3 hours to see him." Eleanor set down the food bowl. "He gets a lot of visitors." The woman nodded, her eyes fixed on Max. "My husband left 4 years ago, just walked out. I kept thinking he'd come back, kept waiting by the phone." Her voice caught. "Everyone told me to move on, that I was wasting my life waiting. Then I read about this dog and," she gestured helplessly, "I needed to see what real faith looks like." Encounters like this became common. Max's vigil touched something in people, a recognition of the deepest kind of love, the kind that transcends all logic and reason. He became a blank canvas onto which people projected their own stories of waiting, of loss, of hope deferred but not abandoned. Some visitors left gifts. A hand-knitted doggy sweater appeared one day, though Max never allowed anyone to put it on him. A local artist created a small watercolor painting of Max and left it mounted on an easel near his usual spot. A retired carpenter built a sturdier doghouse to replace the plastic one, complete with a windbreak and raised floor to keep out the damp. Max accepted these offerings with the same stoic patience he showed toward everything that wasn't the return of his family. He would sniff new items thoroughly, perhaps sensing the good intentions behind them, but never showed particular excitement. The only time Max's demeanor truly changed was when an SUV similar to the carpenter's would pass on the highway. Then, his entire body would come alert, ears perked forward, tail giving a tentative wag. Sometimes he would even take a few steps toward the road before recognition failed, and he would settle back into his waiting posture, a nearly imperceptible drop in his shoulders, the only sign of disappointment. These moments broke Eleanor's heart. She had grown to love Max deeply over the years, visiting him almost daily, talking to him about her life, her concerns, the happenings at the diner. Though he never responded in any conventional way, she felt he listened, that he understood the care behind her presence. "Someone's out there missing you just as much," she would tell him, stroking his graying muzzle. "I have to believe that." 4 years was a long time in human terms. It was even longer in dog years. Max's once golden coat now carried significant streaks of white around his face. The limp from his old injury had become more pronounced, especially in cold weather. But his eyes remained clear and alert, his posture still resolute as he faced the highway day after day. The 4th winter of Max's vigil was particularly harsh. Temperatures dropped well below zero for weeks at a time. The community's concern for Max reached new heights, with some offering to take him home just for the coldest nights. But as always, Max refused to leave. Frank Martinez, the snowplow driver who had cleared space around Max during previous winters, took to bringing his lunch break to the gas station daily. He'd park his massive plow, climb down with a thermos of coffee and a sandwich, and sit with Max while he ate. "You and me, we're both watching these roads," Frank would say. "Different reasons, same job." During one particularly brutal cold snap, Frank arrived to find Max shivering visibly. Alarmed, he called Eleanor, who contacted Dr. Wilson. The three of them tried desperately to coax Max into a vehicle to get him somewhere warm, but the dog planted his feet and whined with such distress that they finally gave up. Instead, they brought warmth to him. Frank hooked up a generator to power a safe heating pad in Max's doghouse. Eleanor brought hot broth to mix with his food. Dr. Wilson administered a vitamin injection to help Max fight off potential illness. "I don't understand how he survives this," Dr. Wilson confessed, watching Max return to his watching spot despite the bitter wind. "Physiologically, he should have given up long ago. It's as if his will is literally keeping him alive." The local newspaper ran a follow-up piece, 4 years and counting, Max's endless vigil. The article described how the dog had become a symbol of hope for the community, how his steadfast presence had inspired people from all walks of life. In a world where commitments are often broken and promises easily forgotten, the article concluded, Max reminds us of what it means to be truly faithful. What no one realized was that this small-town article would be picked up by a regional news aggregator, where it caught the attention of a freelance journalist passing through Montana on a completely unrelated assignment. At the Silver Spoon Diner, Eleanor was serving the mid-afternoon crowd when a stranger took a seat at the counter. Tall and lean, with a camera bag slung over his shoulder and the slightly unkempt appearance of someone who lived life on the road, he had the watchful eyes of a professional observer. "Coffee, please," he said, rubbing his hands together to warm them. "And whatever soup's hot." Eleanor poured his coffee. "Beef barley today. Bowl or cup?" "Bowl. It's freezing out there." He wrapped his hands around the mug gratefully. "Say, I read something about a dog that's been waiting at an old gas station around here. Been there for years?" Eleanor's face softened. "That would be Max. Miller's Gas, about 5 miles down the highway." She paused, studying him. "You a reporter?" He nodded. "Jack Reynolds. Freelance. I'm actually here doing a piece on winter survival in remote communities. But this dog story, it caught my attention." "Max catches everyone's attention," Eleanor said, ladling soup into a bowl. 4 years he's been there now, watching that road like his life depends on it. Which I suppose it does, in a way. Jack pulled out a small notebook. "Mind if I ask you some questions about him? Seems like an incredible story." For the next hour, between serving customers, Eleanor told Jack everything she knew about Max. How he'd appeared after a heavy snow, his refusal to leave the gas station, the community's efforts to care for him, the visitors who came to see him, the myths that had grown around him. "Some of the kids think he's a spirit dog," she said with a small smile. "Say he's guarding the road from something bad. Others think he's waiting for a boy who never came back from war." Jack's interest grew with each detail. "And no one knows who he really belongs to? No one's ever claimed him?" Eleanor shook her head. "We've asked around for years, put up flyers in all the surrounding towns. Nothing. It's like he appeared out of nowhere, but he's waiting for someone specific. That much is clear. You can see it in his eyes." By the time Jack finished his soup, he'd made up his mind. "I'd like to see him for myself, maybe get some footage. Would that be okay? I don't want to disturb him." "Max is used to visitors," Eleanor assured him. "Just keep a respectful distance. He doesn't much care for strangers getting too close. And if you're still there at 6, that's when I bring his dinner." Jack nodded. "Thanks for the information. And the soup, it was excellent." As he paid his bill, Eleanor studied him again. "You're not going to make him out to be some sideshow curiosity, are you? He's special to us." Jack met her gaze directly. "I respect what this dog is doing. Whatever story I tell, it'll honor that." "Satisfied," Eleanor nodded. "Road to the gas station gets narrow. Watch for ice on the curves." An hour before sunset, Jack Reynolds parked his rental car on the crumbling concrete of Miller's Gas. The abandoned station stood like a ghost against the winter landscape, its boarded windows and rusted pumps speaking of a bygone era. The temperature had dropped further, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. At first, he didn't see the dog. The snow-covered lot appeared empty. Then movement caught his eye, a figure in the growing shadows, partially obscured by a rusted gas pump. Max sat in his usual spot, his gray-flecked golden fur ruffled by the biting wind. His eyes were fixed on the highway, scanning each vehicle that passed, his posture one of patient expectancy. Despite the cold, despite the years, he remained at his post. Jack stayed in his car for several minutes, simply observing. There was something profoundly moving about the sight, this aging dog, alone against the elements, maintaining his solitary watch year after year. As a journalist, Jack had covered wars, disasters, political upheavals. He'd witnessed human suffering and resilience in equal measure. But something about this dog's quiet determination struck him more deeply than many of those human stories. Carefully, he retrieved his camera and stepped out into the cold. Max's ears twitched at the sound of the car door, his head turning briefly to assess the visitor before returning to his highway vigil. Jack approached slowly, keeping a respectful distance as Eleanor had advised. He crouched down, the cold immediately seeping through his jeans, and began capturing footage. The golden retriever paid him little attention, his focus unwavering. "Hey, Max," Jack said softly. "Quite a reputation you've got around here." The dog's ear flicked in acknowledgement of his name, but otherwise, he remained statue, still, his breath forming small clouds in the darkening air. Jack filmed for nearly an hour. As the light faded and snow began to fall again, he captured Max's steadfast gaze, the occasional passage of vehicles on the highway, the dog's momentary alertness whenever an SUV passed. As darkness settled, Max's form became a silhouette against the snow, his loyalty visible even in the gathering gloom. When Eleanor arrived with Max's dinner, Jack helped her through the deepening snow, carrying the food bowl while she brought fresh water and a blanket. "He won't use the blanket," she explained, setting it down beside Max anyway. "But I bring a fresh one every few days just in case." Max accepted the food with gentle dignity, eating efficiently before returning to his watch. Jack filmed this too, The kindness of the woman, the quiet gratitude of the dog, the unspoken bond between them. "I've been bringing him dinner for nearly 4 years now," Eleanor said, watching Max with affection. "Never missed a day unless the roads were closed. Even then, Frank, he's our snowplow driver, would check on him." Jack nodded, struck by the community that had formed around this faithful dog. "What do you think he's waiting for?" "Really?" Eleanor was quiet for a moment, her lined face contemplative in the dim light. "A miracle," she finally said. "Aren't we all?" After Eleanor left, Jack remained at the gas station, filming as snow fell around Max, who seemed impervious to the weather. There was something almost mythic about the scene: the loyal dog, the abandoned station, the endless highway stretching into darkness. When the cold finally drove him back to his car, Jack sat for a long time reviewing the footage. It was powerful in its simplicity. No dramatic action, no contrived narrative, just the pure visual story of a dog's unwavering faith. Back at his motel, Jack edited the footage late into the night. He kept the piece short and straightforward, letting the images speak for themselves. Against a backdrop of Max's silent vigil, he added a simple caption at the end. "For 4 years, he has waited at this abandoned gas station in Montana. Through blizzards and heat waves, he has never left his post. No one knows who he's waiting for. Do you?" Then he added contact information, his professional email and phone number, and posted the video online. It was a small piece, nothing like the in-depth journalism he usually produced. Just a minute of footage, a few lines of text, and a question. He didn't expect much response. Perhaps a few comments from dog lovers, maybe a share or two from people touched by the story. He had no way of knowing that by morning, his simple video would have been viewed over 1 million times, that it would be shared across multiple platforms, sparking conversations, theories, and emotional reactions, that it would eventually make its way to a woman in Wyoming who would stop breathing for a moment when she saw it. Jack Reynolds went to sleep that night, having no idea he had just set in motion the miracle Max had been waiting for all along. 200 miles away, in a modest home on a quiet street in Wyoming, Lily Carpenter sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was dark except for the blue glow of her phone screen illuminating her tired face. It was nearly midnight. Mike had gone to bed hours ago, and 14-year-old Noah was sleeping deeply down the hall, his room still adorned with space posters and, in the corner, an empty dog bed that no one had had the heart to remove. Insomnia had become Lily's unwelcome companion over the years. On nights like this, when sleep eluded her, she would scroll through social media mindlessly, hoping the monotony would eventually lull her brain into rest. Usually, she skimmed past videos, preferring not to wake Mike with unexpected sounds. But something about the thumbnail of a dog in snow made her pause, her finger hovering over the image. She tapped play, keeping the volume low. The video began with a wide shot of an abandoned gas station in winter twilight. Snow swirled around the dilapidated building, its darkened windows like empty eyes staring out at a desolate highway. The camera panned slowly, finally settling on a golden retriever sitting beside a rusted gas pump, his attention fixed on the road with an intensity that seemed almost human. Lily's heart stuttered in her chest. There was something hauntingly familiar about the dog's posture, about the way his ears perked forward with every passing car. His coat was grayer than she remembered, his frame leaner, but the patient alertness in his eyes. Her hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. It couldn't be. It was impossible. After 4 years? But the distinctive white blaze on the chest, the slight tilt of the head. "Max?" she whispered into the dark kitchen. The video continued, showing the dog's unwavering gaze as snow accumulated on his fur. Then came the simple text. "For 4 years, he has waited at this abandoned gas station in Montana. Through blizzards and heat waves, he has never left his post. No one knows who he's waiting for. Do you?" Lily's hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. 4 years. Montana. It all aligned with when and where they'd lost Max after the accident. Could it really be him? Their Max? She played the video again, scrutinizing every frame. The highway sign visible in the background read, "Miller Creek 5 miles. Miller Creek, that was near where they'd had the accident on that snowy Thanksgiving night. The gas station, Miller's Gas. It had to be the same stretch of road. Her mind raced back to those terrible days after the crash. Noah in a coma, Mike in so much pain he could barely move. Her own injuries leaving her barely able to function. By the time they were well enough to search properly for Max, weeks had passed. They'd put up posters, called shelters, driven the accident route repeatedly. But there had been so much snow, and the area was so remote. Eventually, they'd had to accept that Max was gone, likely fallen prey to the harsh winter or predators. But here was this video, showing a dog that looked remarkably like their Max, waiting at a gas station near where they'd had the accident. Waiting for 4 years. Exactly how long it had been since they lost him. Lily's finger trembled as she clicked the share button, forwarding the video to herself through email. She needed to show Mike, to show Noah, but she also needed to be certain before giving them false hope. The loss of Max had been devastating for all of them, but especially for Noah. To raise his hopes only to dash them again would be cruel. She scrutinized the contact information at the end of the video. Jack Reynolds, with an email address and phone number. A journalist, apparently. She needed to reach him, to ask for more details, to confirm the location. It was far too late to call now. Morning would have to be soon enough, but sleep was now completely out of the question. Lily sat at the kitchen table until dawn broke, playing the video over and over, each viewing cementing her certainty. That was Max. Their Max. Against all odds, he had survived, and he had been waiting for them all this time. When Mike stumbled into the kitchen at 6, seeking coffee before his early shift at work, he found Lily still sitting at the table, her eyes red-rimmed but strangely bright. "Lily, you okay? Did you sleep at all?" She looked up at him, her expression a complex mixture of disbelief, hope, and a deep, aching sadness for what they'd unwittingly put their faithful dog through. "Mike," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need you to look at something." She handed him her phone, the video queued up and ready to play. "I think I found Max." Mike's coffee forgotten. He sank into a chair beside her and pressed play. His reaction mirrored hers. The initial confusion, the dawning recognition, the stunned disbelief. It can't be, he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. He played the video again, leaning closer to the screen. "The location, that's near where we had the accident." Lily nodded. "Miller's Gas. Remember? It was just past there that we hit the ice. And they're saying this dog has been there for 4 years? The whole time? That's what the video says." Mike ran a hand across his face, his eyes suspiciously bright. "We have to tell Noah. We have to go there, Lily, if there's even a chance." "I know," she agreed. "I'm going to call the journalist who posted this as soon as it's a decent hour. Get more information. Make sure." She hesitated. "Should we wait to tell Noah? Until we're sure?" Mike was already shaking his head. "He deserves to know, even if it's not Max. Though God, Lily, it really looks like him. Noah should be part of this." They waited until 7:30, letting their son get as much sleep as possible on a school day. Then Lily went to his room and sat gently on the edge of his bed. At 14, Noah was no longer the little boy who had cried himself to sleep over the loss of his dog. He had grown tall and gangly, his voice deepening, his interests shifting to computers and basketball. But Lily knew that somewhere inside him, the wound of losing Max had never fully healed. "Noah, honey," she said softly, brushing his hair from his forehead. "We need to show you something important." Noah blinked awake, confusion giving way to concern as he registered both his parents in his room, his mother's face bearing traces of tears. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting up quickly. Mike sat on the other side of the bed. "Nothing's wrong. In fact, well, just watch this, son." Lily handed Noah her phone with the video ready. His sleepy confusion gave way to rapt attention as he watched. When the footage ended, he stared at the darkened screen for a long moment. "Is that?" His voice cracked. "Do you think that's Max? Our Max?" "We think it might be," Lily said carefully. "The location matches where we had the accident. The timing, 4 years, matches too." Noah was already throwing back his covers, scrambling out of bed. "We have to go get him. Now, today." "Noah, wait," Mike said, placing a steadying hand on his son's shoulder. "We need to be sure. Your mom's going to call the journalist who posted this, get more information." "But what if it is Max? He's been waiting for us for 4 years, Dad." 4 years. Noah's voice broke again, but this time with an emotion too big for his teenage frame to contain. "We have to go now." Lily and Mike exchanged a look over their son's head. They both recognized the urgency in his voice, the desperate need to right what now felt like a terrible wrong, the abandonment of a family member who had never stopped believing they would return. "Let me make a few calls," Lily said. "If this checks out, and I think it will, we'll leave today. I promise, Noah." While Noah showered and dressed in record time, Lily called the number from the video. It went to voicemail. She left a message explaining who they were and their suspicion that the dog in the video was their long-lost pet. Then she sent an email with the same information, adding family photos of Max from before the accident for comparison. Mike called his boss to request emergency personal leave. "Family situation," he explained. "Need to head to Montana today. By 9 a.m., they were packed and ready. Overnight bags thrown together. Noah's school notified of his absence. The car gassed up. They were about to leave when Lily's phone rang with an unknown number. "Hello?" she answered, her heart racing. "Mrs. Carpenter? This is Jack Reynolds. I got your message about the dog at Miller's Gas." "Yes, thank you for calling back," Lily said, putting the phone on speaker so Mike and Noah could hear. We believe the dog in your video might be our Max." We lost him 4 years ago in an accident very close to that gas station. There was a pause on the other end. I'm actually at the gas station right now, Jack said. The response to the video has been overwhelming. I came back to check on the dog, make sure all the attention wasn't disturbing him. Is he still there? Noah asked anxiously, leaning toward the phone. He is, Jack confirmed, sitting in the same spot as yesterday, watching the road. Mrs. Carpenter, I looked at the photos you sent in your email. I'm no expert, but the markings match. The white chest patch, the shape of the ears. It could very well be your dog. Lily closed her eyes briefly, overwhelmed. We're leaving now. It's about a 3-hour drive from where we are, if the roads are clear. The main highways are open, but there's snow in the forecast for later today, Jack warned. The sooner you can get here, the better. I'll stay with him until you arrive. Thank you, Mike said. We appreciate that more than you know. Just one thing, Jack added, his voice taking on a careful tone. I'm not sure what to expect when, if, your dog sees you after so long. The locals tell me he's never shown much interest in other people trying to take him from here. But if this is your Max, and he's been waiting for you specifically all this time, we understand, Lily said, though her voice wavered. We'll be prepared for whatever happens. After ending the call, the Carpenters got into their SUV, a newer model than the one that had crashed 4 years ago, but similar enough that Noah had initially been reluctant to ride in it, the association with the accident and losing Max too painful. Now, he sat forward in the back seat, as if by leaning closer to the windshield he could somehow speed their journey. We're coming, Max, he whispered. We're finally coming. The drive was tense and largely silent. Each of them was lost in their own thoughts, their own hopes and fears. What if it wasn't Max after all? Or worse, what if it was Max but he didn't recognize them after so long? What if he had gone feral, or the trauma of being separated from them had changed him irrevocably? And beneath all these questions lay a deeper, more painful one. How had they failed to find him? How had they given up searching when he had never given up waiting? As they crossed the Montana state line, the skies darkened, and the first flakes of the predicted snowfall began to drift down. Mike tightened his grip on the steering wheel, memories of that Thanksgiving night all too vivid. Maybe I should drive, Lily offered, noticing his tension. He shook his head. I'm okay, just being careful. The snow intensified as they neared Miller Creek. By the time they saw the exit sign, visibility had decreased significantly, with thick flakes swirling in their headlights. Should we stop in town? Lily asked. Wait for this to pass? No, Noah objected from the back seat. We're almost there. Please, Dad. Mike glanced at his son in the rearview mirror, seeing both the 14-year-old he'd become and the 10-year-old who had lost his best friend. We'll go slow, he decided. But Noah's right. We've made Max wait long enough. They proceeded cautiously along the highway, passing through the small town of Miller Creek. A large hand-painted sign on the town limit proclaimed it, Home of Max, the faithful friend. The simple tribute brought tears to Lily's eyes. The whole town knows him, she murmured. He's become their dog too. 5 miles beyond the town, Mike slowed the SUV further. Should be coming up on the right, he said, peering through the snow-streaked windshield. There, I see something. Through the veil of falling snow, the shadowy outline of an abandoned gas station emerged. Even in its dilapidated state, there was something hauntingly familiar about it. They had passed it just minutes before their accident 4 years ago, the last normal moment before their lives had changed. As they pulled off the highway onto the cracked concrete of the station lot, their headlights illuminated 2 figures standing beside a rusted gas pump. One was a tall man with a camera, Jack Reynolds, presumably. The other was a stocky, stooped woman bundled in a heavy coat. But it was the third figure that drew their complete attention, a golden retriever, barely visible in the swirling snow, sitting perfectly still and watching their approaching vehicle with an intensity that seemed to pierce through the storm. Mike parked the SUV and cut the engine. For a long moment, none of them moved. It was as if time itself had paused, the universe holding its breath for what would happen next. That's him, Noah whispered, his face pressed to the window. Dad, Mom, that's Max. I know it's him. Lily reached back and squeezed her son's hand, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Beside her, Mike took a deep breath, then opened his door and stepped out into the snow. Jack Reynolds approached, hand extended. Mr. Carpenter? I'm Jack. This is Eleanor Parker. She's been looking after the dog since he appeared here. Mike shook their hands automatically, but his eyes never left the golden retriever, who remained sitting, watching them with unblinking focus. That's our Max, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I'd know him anywhere, even with the gray. Eleanor wiped tears from her weathered cheeks. 4 years I've been feeding him, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he's looking at you right now. Inside the SUV, Noah couldn't wait any longer. He threw open his door and stepped out into the snow, Lily right behind him. Max? Noah called, his adolescent voice cracking. Max? It's me. It's Noah. The golden retriever's ears twitched forward at the sound of the boy's voice. He rose slowly to his feet, his body tense, his gaze locked on Noah with an almost unbearable intensity. For a long, breathless moment, Max didn't move. He stood perfectly still, as if afraid that what he was seeing might disappear if he so much as blinked. 4 years of waiting, of watching every vehicle that passed, of maintaining his vigil through storm and heat and loneliness, had culminated in this moment. Then, with a sound that was half whimper, half bark, a broken sound that seemed to carry all the emotion of 4 years of faithful waiting, Max launched himself forward. His movements were stiff from age and the cold, his once graceful gait now marked by a pronounced limp, but the power of his joy propelled him through the snow. Noah dropped to his knees, arms outstretched. Max, oh Max. The dog crashed into the boy's embrace with such force that Noah fell backward into the snow. Max's entire body trembled as he pressed himself against Noah, his tail whipping back and forth with such violence it sent snow flying in all directions. He whined and barked in alternating bursts, the sounds almost like sobs, as if the depth of his emotion was too great to be contained in silence. Noah buried his face in Max's fur, his tears dampening the golden coat. "I'm sorry, buddy," he choked out between sobs. "I'm so sorry we didn't find you. I'm so sorry you had to wait so long." Mike and Lily knelt in the snow beside them, their hands reaching to touch the dog they had thought lost forever. Max turned to acknowledge them, licking their faces frantically, as if trying to convince himself they were real, that they had finally come back for him. Eleanor stood a short distance away, tears streaming down her face. "In all these years," she said to Jack, who was filming the reunion with tears in his own eyes, "I've never heard him make a sound, not one bark, not one whine, nothing until today." The reunion continued in the falling snow, the Carpenter family and their long-lost dog oblivious to the cold, to the audience of two watching with tear-filled eyes, to anything but the miracle of being together again after so long. Eventually, Mike looked up at Eleanor and Jack. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for taking care of him, for posting that video, for staying with him until we got here." Eleanor nodded, unable to speak. Jack lowered his camera, feeling that some moments were too sacred to capture. "We should get him out of this weather," Lily said, noticing how Max's legs trembled, whether from emotion or cold or both. "Get him home, home." The word hung in the snowy air like a promise. Noah stood, but Max pressed against his legs, unwilling to be even inches away from him. "It's okay, boy," Noah reassured him, his hand never leaving the dog's head. "We're taking you with us. You're coming home." As if understanding the words, Max gave a single definitive bark, the sound of acceptance, of relief, of a vigil finally, blessedly ended. Mike opened the rear door of the SUV. Noah climbed in first, and Max followed immediately, unwilling to be separated again even for a moment. Once in the back seat, Max pressed himself against Noah's side, exactly as he had done on that Thanksgiving night 4 years ago, before everything went wrong. Lily turned to Eleanor. "Would you like to follow us back to town? We'd love to buy you dinner. Hear everything about Max's time here." Eleanor shook her head. "You go on. Get him home. I'll spread the word around town that Max's family came for him. There are a lot of people who want to hear this ending." She smiled through her tears. "Though I suppose it's really a beginning, isn't it?" After exchanging contact information and promising to keep in touch, the Carpenters said their goodbyes. As they pulled away from Miller's gas station, Max looked back once through the rear window at the place where he had kept his vigil for so long. Then he turned and settled more firmly against Noah, his eyes slowly closing in what appeared to be his first peaceful rest in 4 years. The journey home was nothing like the tense drive to find Max. Despite the worsening weather, a profound sense of peace filled the SUV. In the back seat, Noah kept his arm around Max, who remained pressed against him as if afraid the boy might vanish if he allowed any space between them. "I can feel his heart beating," Noah said softly. "It's so fast." Lily turned in her seat to look at them. Max's eyes were half closed, but they opened fully whenever the car slowed or turned, a momentary alarm crossing his face until he confirmed they were still on the move, still together. "He's afraid we'll leave him again," she said, her voice catching. Mike glanced in the rearview mirror. "Never," he promised. "Never again, Max." At Noah's insistence, they stopped at a drive-thru to get Max a burger, his first fast food in 4 years. The dog accepted the offering with gentle politeness, eating from Noah's hand with careful dignity. It was a far cry from the exuberant puppy who had once snatched treats with playful abandon, but there was something deeply moving about his newfound patience, as if the years of waiting had taught him that good things would come in their own time. As they crossed back into Wyoming, the snow began to ease. Max had finally relaxed enough to stretch out across the back seat, his head in Noah's lap, though he still startled at sudden movements or sounds. "Do you think he understands what's happening?" Noah asked. "That he's really coming home for good?" "I think he's starting to," Lily said, "but it might take time for him to fully believe it." Noah nodded, continuing to stroke Max's graying muzzle. "I'll make sure he knows. Every day." It was after dark when they finally pulled into their driveway. Max sat up alertly as the car stopped, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar house. This isn't the home he remembers, Mike realized aloud. They had moved a year after the accident, the old house holding too many painful memories, including those of the missing dog. "It's still home," Noah said firmly, "because we're all here now." They led Max into the house slowly, allowing him to sniff and explore at his own pace. He moved with caution, his tail held low but not tucked, his nose working constantly to process all the new yet familiar scents. When they reached Noah's room, the boy pointed to the dog bed still sitting in the corner. "Look, Max, I kept it for you. I knew you'd come back someday." Max approached the bed carefully, circling it twice before gingerly stepping onto it. He turned another full circle, then settled down with a deep sigh, his eyes never leaving Noah. "I think he's exhausted," Lily said, wiping away fresh tears. "We all are. Let's get some rest and we'll start figuring everything out tomorrow." Noah nodded but made no move to leave Max's side. "I'm going to sleep on the floor next to him tonight, is that okay?" Mike and Lily exchanged a look. "Of course," Mike said. "Whatever will help him feel safe." After bringing in blankets and a pillow for Noah, they left the boy and his dog together, closing the door softly behind them. In the hallway, Lily collapsed against Mike's chest, finally giving full vent to the emotions she'd been controlling all day. "4 years, Mike," she sobbed. "He waited for us for 4 years, while we gave up." Mike held her tightly, his own tears flowing freely now. "We didn't know, Lily. We searched. We did everything we could think of. But he never gave up on us, not for one day." They clung to each other in the darkened hallway, the weight of what their faithful dog had endured settling fully upon them. The miracle of his return was tempered by the knowledge of his years of lonely waiting, of the loyalty that had kept him alive against all odds. In Noah's room, the boy lay on the floor beside Max's bed, one hand resting on the dog's flank, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "I missed you so much," he whispered. "Every single day, I missed you." Max shifted slightly, adjusting so that his muzzle rested against Noah's outstretched arm, the closest contact he could maintain while still remaining on his bed. It was as if, even in his exhaustion, he couldn't bear to fully separate from his boy. The first night passed peacefully until about 3 a.m., when Lily and Mike were awakened by the sound of nails on hardwood. They found Max in the hallway, pacing anxiously, his breath coming in quick pants. "Hey, boy," Mike said softly, kneeling to stroke the dog's head. "What's wrong?" Max whined, looking toward the front door, then back at Mike with obvious distress. "I think he's afraid we'll leave him," Lily realized, or that he should be back at his post, waiting. Mike nodded in understanding. "Let's show him there's no need to wait anymore." They gently guided Max back to Noah's room, where their son was still asleep on the floor. The moment Max saw Noah, his anxiety visibly subsided. He returned to his bed, but this time positioned himself half on the dog bed, half on Noah's blankets, one paw stretched out to maintain contact with the boy. Similar incidents occurred over the next few nights. They would find Max at the front door, sometimes sitting in silent vigil, sometimes pacing with obvious distress. Each time, reassurance and the sight of Noah would calm him, but it was clear that the dog was struggling to believe that his waiting was truly over, that he didn't need to return to his post at the gas station. "It's like he has PTSD, Lily observed on the 4th morning, watching as Max followed Noah around the house, never more than a few feet away from him. "Which I suppose he does, after everything he's been through." Their first trip to the veterinarian confirmed what they already suspected. Max had endured significant hardship during his years at the gas station. He was underweight, had arthritis in his hips and in the leg that had been injured in the original accident, and showed signs of exposure and malnutrition despite the community's efforts to care for him. The fact that he survived 4 Montana winters living outdoors is nothing short of miraculous, the vet told them. Most dogs simply couldn't have done it. His will to live, to wait, must have been extraordinary. They left with medications for Max's arthritis, a special diet plan to help him regain healthy weight, and instructions for gentle exercise to rebuild his strength. The vet had been cautiously optimistic about Max's physical recovery, but had warned them that the psychological impact of his ordeal might never fully heal. "He may always have some anxiety about being separated from you," she explained. "Animals who've experienced abandonment, even accidental, as in Max's case, often develop deep-seated fears about it happening again." The Carpenters took this warning to heart, making adjustments to ensure Max always felt secure. Noah kept his dog's bed right beside his own. When the family went out, they made sure Max could see them preparing to leave and reassured him repeatedly that they would return. They established routines that Max could count on: predictable patterns that helped him understand that this new life was stable and permanent. Slowly, day by day, Max began to relax. His tail, which had been held low since his return, began to rise and occasionally even wag with something approaching his old enthusiasm. He started to explore the backyard on his own, though he would frequently check to make sure Noah or another family member was still visible. He began to accept brief separations without panic, seeming to understand that when his family left the house, they would indeed come back for him. One significant breakthrough came about 2 weeks after Max's return. Noah had been sitting at the kitchen table doing homework when he heard an unfamiliar sound, a soft woof from under the table. Looking down, he saw Max with his old plush duck toy in his mouth, tail wagging hesitantly, eyes bright with a question. "Do you want to play?" Noah asked incredulously. Max gave another gentle bark, dropping the toy and then picking it up again, a gesture unchanged from his puppy days, an invitation to the games they had once shared daily. Noah slid from his chair to the floor, taking the toy when Max offered it, and then tossing it gently across the kitchen. Max trotted after it, his arthritis evident in his stiff gait, but his joy unmistakable as he returned with the toy. Lily found them like that 10 minutes later, her teenage son lying on the kitchen floor, laughing as an aging golden retriever brought him a soggy toy again and again, both of them caught in a moment of pure, uncomplicated happiness. "Mom," Noah called, seeing her in the doorway. "He wants to play. He remembers how to play." Lily nodded, too overcome to speak. It was as if a missing piece of their family had finally clicked back into place, not just Max's physical presence, but his spirit, which had been subdued by years of waiting and uncertainty. As the weeks passed, more of Max's personality began to re-emerge. He started to greet Mike at the door when he returned from work, tail wagging, sometimes even bringing a toy as a welcome home gift. He began to seek out Lily for affection, resting his head on her lap while she read or watched TV. And most significantly, he started sleeping through the night without anxiety episodes, secure in the knowledge that morning would find his family still around him. The community that had supported Max during his long vigil remained part of his story. Eleanor Parker was the first to visit, making the 3-hour drive with a bag of the special treats she'd been bringing him for years. Max greeted her with obvious recognition and affection, accepting her offerings with the same gentle dignity he'd shown at the gas station. "He looks 10 years younger," she marveled, watching Max play a gentle game of tug-of-war with Noah in the backyard. Happiness suits him. Other visitors followed. The veterinarian who had checked on Max, the snowplow driver who had cleared space around him during winters, even families whose children had grown up visiting the forever dog at Miller's Gas. Each time, Max greeted them with calm acceptance, as if acknowledging the role they had played in his survival. Jack Reynolds visited too, bringing footage he had edited into a short documentary about Max's story. The Carpenters watched it together, including the moving reunion scene that had now been viewed by millions around the world. "I never expected the response it's gotten," Jack admitted. "People seem to need this story, this proof that loyalty and love can endure against impossible odds." Indeed, Max's story had resonated far beyond Montana and Wyoming. Letters and emails poured in from around the country, many from people sharing their own stories of lost and found pets, of hope that persisted beyond reason, of faith rewarded. "Max has become a symbol," the Miller Creek town mayor told a reporter who came to write about the now famous waiting dog. "He reminds us that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply not give up." In response to the outpouring of interest and affection, the Carpenters started a social media account for Max, sharing updates on his progress and his new life. Noah, tech-savvy as most teenagers are, took charge of it, posting photos of Max sleeping in sunbeams, playing with his old toys, and joining the family on gentle hikes as his strength improved. "Max's second chance," Noah captioned one particularly poignant image of the golden retriever sitting on their porch, watchful but relaxed, a visible contentment in his posture that had been absent in all the footage from the gas station. 3 months after Max's return, the family made a decision. With Noah's spring break approaching, they would take a trip back to Miller Creek, not to return Max, but to honor his years of waiting and to formally thank the community that had watched over him. The town embraced the idea enthusiastically. The mayor declared the day of their visit Max Day, and plans were made for a small ceremony at Miller's gas station, where a permanent memorial would be placed. When the day arrived, Max showed no anxiety about the long car ride, seeming to understand that this time he was traveling with his family, not being left behind. As they approached the now familiar exit for Miller Creek, Lily glanced back to see him sitting alertly between Noah and a duffel bag, his expression curious but unafraid. "He knows he's going home with us," she said softly to Mike. The ceremony at Miller's Gas was simple but deeply moving. Nearly half the town turned out despite the chilly spring air, Eleanor had organized everything, from the refreshments served at folding tables to the small podium where the mayor, Mike, and even Noah gave brief speeches about loyalty, community, and second chances. Max, wearing a new collar and looking significantly healthier than when he'd left 3 months earlier, accepted the attention with regal composure. He stayed close to Noah, but showed no distress at being back at the site of his long vigil. It was as if he understood that this chapter of his life was closed now, that his waiting had been vindicated. The memorial itself was a simple bench placed where Max had kept his watch, engraved with words suggested by Eleanor. For Max, who waited with unwavering faith from 2019, 2023, and for all who wait with hope against hope, love endures. As the ceremony concluded and people began to disperse, Noah led Max to the bench, sitting down and patting the space beside him. After a moment's hesitation, Max jumped up to sit next to his boy, looking out at the highway where he had focused his attention for so long. "You don't have to watch anymore, buddy," Noah said, his arm around the golden retriever's shoulders. "You found us, or we found you. Either way, we're together now." Max turned to look at him, and for a moment, it seemed as if the dog truly understood. Then he leaned against Noah's side with a contented sigh, his eyes closing briefly in what could only be described as peace. As they prepared to leave, Mike found Jack Reynolds filming the scene from a respectful distance. "Making another documentary?" Mike asked with a smile. Jack lowered his camera. "I think the world needs the full story. The waiting was remarkable, but the homecoming, the healing, that's the part people need to see too." Mike nodded in agreement. "If Max's story helps even one person keep faith, or brings one lost pet home, it's worth sharing." Back in the SUV, with Miller Creek receding in the rearview mirror, the Carpenters and Max began the journey home, not just to their house, but to the fullness of life as a complete family once again. Max sat in his now customary spot beside Noah, but his posture was different from the tense vigilance of their first trip home together. Now he rested comfortably, secure in the knowledge that where his family went, he would go too. His days of waiting were over. For the Carpenters, Max's return had brought healing of a different kind, the resolution of a grief they had carried for 4 years, the easing of Noah's lingering trauma from the accident, the restoration of a piece of their family they had feared was lost forever. But perhaps more profoundly, Max's example had taught them something about the nature of love itself, that it could be patient beyond all reason, faithful beyond all hope, enduring beyond all expectation. As they crossed the Wyoming state line, Noah looked down at his dog, now sleeping peacefully with his head on the boy's lap. "We made it, Max," he whispered. "We all made it home." Max's extraordinary story of loyalty and love reminds us of the profound bonds we share with the animals in our lives. His 4-year vigil at Miller's gas station wasn't just a testament to one dog's devotion. It was a powerful reminder that love, at its purest, waits. It endures through storms and seasons, through heartbreak and hardship, never losing faith that reunion is possible. If Max's journey touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel for more stories that celebrate the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. And don't forget to share this video with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes, against all odds, patience and faith are rewarded in the most beautiful ways.